So we are producing a voter guide, which is available online at our website, athensleagueofwomenvoters.org, and will be, if it's not already, at vote411.org. But also then we have candidate forums, and this evening is a candidate forum in advance of, in preparation for the May 2nd primaries. We have two candidates who are vying to be the Democratic candidate for the 3rd Ward representative to Athens City Council on the November ballot. So tonight, these two gentlemen are going to be speaking, and one of them will be the candidate in November. We need to know about you, and we welcome you both. Sam Crowell and Eric Gunn are here to tell us about themselves and then to answer questions. So, welcome, and Ellsworth, I'll turn it over to you, our moderator. I'm going to be timekeeper, so I'm sitting up here hoping to keep you guys on.
I have to figure out how to turn this on.
It's good fun.
Is that on?
Yeah.
Okay. Now can you hear me properly? Because as I chuckle, I'm a user, not a technician, so I'll try to speak carefully and closely to it. Welcome to this candidates forum sponsored by the Athens County Public Library and the Athens County League of Women Voters. Tonight we will hear from the two candidates for the 3rd Ward in 3rd Ward Council seat in Athens. It's Eric Gunn and Samuel Crowell. And let me just sketch out our guidelines, which haven't really changed. So each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, and we selected the order of that by lot a little bit ago, so it'll be Eric first and then Sam, and then we'll turn to Sarah Brumfield of the Athens Messenger for, let's say, 2 questions, and then the response time is 1.5 minutes apiece on the questions. And Mary Costello there is timing it. We don't shoot your head off until the second time. You get about 5 seconds of slack the first time. And actually, over the years, our candidates have respected that time limit very, very well. And so that'll work just fine. And then, yes.
Ellsworth, I believe Connor Morris from the Athens News.
I can't hear you.
Connor from the Athens News is on his way down. So you'll have 2 meetings.
Oh, he's on his way down. Okay. So if he gets here, we'll give him that second question you're itching to ask. Thank you. Okay. And then after questions from the media, we'll turn to questions from you in the audience. And all of those will be conveyed over here where we have people who will look at them to make sure that the questions are such that they can be answered by both people. And they're not gotcha questions, and they haven't already been asked earlier in the evening. And then at the end, we'll come back for a 2-minute closing speech with each of our candidates. And as I and then Sam Crowell second, and then the first question, Eric will answer it first, and then we'll alternate from then on right through the evening. So, why don't we start in, and Eric Gunn, your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Gunn. I'd like to thank the Athens Public Library and the League of Women Voters for sponsoring the forum tonight. Many of you might know me as owner-operator of Hoffa's Records in the Union Bar uptown. Like many Athenians, I came here to go to school, and I still haven't left. I moved into the 3rd Ward in January of 1991 as a transfer student on Highland Avenue and stayed there until I bought my current residence on Franklin Avenue. So I've been the entire time I've been in Athens, I have been a 3rd Ward resident. I believe that I offer perspective that I think would be valuable to City Council, and that is someone who is a business owner, operator in the uptown area. I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of what goes on uptown, both during the day, in the evening, and late night. Ron Lucas likes to say he likes to talk to me because I'm in the trenches. And I talk to delivery drivers before 8 a.m. and I talk to stumbling college students at 3 in the morning. So I think I have a perspective that City Council could use, because whether people love Uptown, hate Uptown, have a love-hate relationship with Uptown, it still is the center of much of what goes on in Athens. And I think I offer a sort of practical, realistic view of how things operate Uptown. I care deeply about Athens, and I think it's incumbent upon people who care deeply about their communities to get involved, which is why I'm sitting here tonight asking for your vote. I've known Sam for a while. I consider him a friend. I don't think you'll find anything acrimonious between either one of us. So anyway, I look forward to everybody's questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric Dunn. Now, Sam Crowell, your opening statement.
Well, you do have two Ward 3 veterans up here. I moved to Ward 3 in 1970 when I was 2. My parents still live in a house across from Highland Park, and I lived there until 1985. I'm a proud graduate of West Elementary, Athens Middle School, Athens High School, and Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin. Public junior high schools after college. And then I moved to Washington, D.C., where I met my lovely wife in the back row there, Terry Kelleher. And I convinced her to move to Athens, back to Athens with me, first time for her in 1996. I'd been out of Athens really for about 10 years. And I thought that graduate school was the right thing to do. And I came back to do a degree in international affairs, and she came to do a degree in computer science, electrical engineering. We were going to stay 2 years and then move on with our lives, and we are still here. So that's what happens. I have 3 children, and we live on Sunnyside Drive in Ward 3. So I've spent, I think Eric was saying that he's had 2 houses in Athens in Ward 3, and I didn't have the first one, but I grew up on North Hill and now I'm on Sunnyside. I have been involved in the city in a lot of kind of myriad of ways, and I worked as a kid for the city streets department, repairing our brick roads. I moved on from there and worked for a number of summers for the highway department. And when I came back to school, I did the degree in international affairs and then started one in history. And I taught in the Ohio University's history department for about 9 years. And I also worked for Scott Bradley at Zoe Fine Dining. After a number of years at Zoe's, I took a position with the university in the Office of Sustainability. And that is where I currently work. And it's really through the Office of Sustainability that I was able to bring a lot of these sort of experiences in Athens together. I grew up, my parents both worked for the university, sort of thinking about the university. And then when I moved back here as an adult, I started to think more about the city and the way the city has developed and changed over my lifetime. My work with sustainability has put me in contact with a number of local organizations, including the Athens City County Health Department and Rural Action and the city. I was asked to serve on the Pedestrian and Bicycle Committee, and then I moved on to be appointed to the Rec Advisory Board. And I'm very interested in working with the Arts, Parks, and Recreation if I am elected to council, as well as to working with the city on issues of zero waste and how we can encourage a circular economy in Athens so that we can keep our resources working for us. And I'm pleased to be here, and thanks to the women for organizing tonight's debate.
Thank you, Sam Crowell. And now we'll turn to a question from Sarah Brumfield of the Messenger. And Eric, you'll answer this one first.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. This year, the city will be reviewing its comprehensive plan, which was adopted 11 years ago. As veteran Athenians, over the past decade or so, what has the city been doing that you think they're on the right path towards what you've seen that they've implemented well the last decade?
What do I think they've implemented well?
Yes.
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is the changes that have happened with code and the rental houses in the 20 years that I've been here as somebody who employs students, works with students, is around students. I know that the houses that I lived in when I first came here would probably not be allowed to exist today, and I think that that would be the first thing that comes to my mind.
I'll get right to a very recent development in the city. Lots of debate, lots of great healthy debate about our East State Street project. I am very fortunate through work with the Office of Sustainability to have been involved in some workshops about complete street efforts. And I really think that this is the way that cities such as ours should move forward. We should be thinking about all modes of transportation. We should be thinking about, obviously, automobiles are part of our lives, but we should be thinking about mass transit. We should be thinking about pedestrians, so sidewalks, and we should also be thinking about bicycles. I think that is the way that the communities like ours are moving forward. And sometimes you have to build the infrastructure and then they will come. So some people may not think that it should be part of East State Street, but I think if you study the complete street philosophy and you think about how communities are developing and what you want your community to look like, that includes all different types of people on different modes of transportation. So complete streets is one. Something else that I think is very important for this community in particular is its relationship with the university. And I really feel like I am somebody who can bring a perspective from both the university and the city together. I think that I've seen in my time here, Sarah, that over the last few years, and Mayor Patterson has been very good at bringing together the city and the university, and I think we should continue that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And now the next question, you'll answer first, Sam, and Sarah, if you have another question, you're on.
All right. What prompted you to run for city council after being in the city so long?
Well, I've always been very interested in being involved. I spend a lot of time volunteering with my kids, coaching youth activities, supporting them in the theater. I've had a long history in the theater myself, and I began to think about things that the city needs, and being I can sort of increase my involvement. There's always volunteering, and I'm a big proponent of volunteer work, but being able to be active with the council and really being and I try to follow all of the debates, but you can't really know what's happening unless you're in on those committee meetings and at those council meetings, so that's what really inspired me to run.
Inspiration to run for city council comes down to one piece of proposed legislation on West Union Street. And the way that it was originally proposed, the city street making West Union one lane, I was strongly opposed to, and it got me council people and enacting the proposed plan. When the plans changed and keeping it 2 lanes, my experience made me feel that I really felt that the proposal as it was laid out was a negative in multiple ways for Uptown.
Thank you.
Okay, let's turn to the first question from the audience. And if at any point you'd like to have me reread the question, just feel free anytime. What do you, let's see, and this will be, you'll be first then, Eric, just so you know ahead of time, both of you. Okay. What do you recommend for increasing parking uptown and facilitating the movement of traffic around Athens' downtown and the OU campus?
Well, that seems to be a tough question, as Athens is, from people I've talked to who were on council in the 70s, have said that parking uptown is an issue. I think it's always been an issue. And I don't think there's any easy solutions, because if there were, they would have already been enacted. Obviously, we can try to encourage people to take public transportation. We can encourage people to ride bikes. We can do all the things that Sam talked about in terms of bike lanes, access. The reality is, people visiting Athens and coming from out of town, people are going to drive. I would love to work with some people to find a solution. I wish I knew an easy one, but proposals of various parking garages and other things I would probably be supportive of. But again, these are things that not everybody is agreement on, and there's no easy working solution that I can think of.
Okay, Sam?
I have to agree with Eric on there not being an easy solution. I think long-term and the complete streets philosophy or strategy get out of the idea that we can park our dream. I want to drive downtown, and I want to park in front of the business that I'm going into, and I want to conduct my business. And I think we have to realize that in our small town and the amount of parking that we have, that's not always feasible. So there have to be other ways around that. And I don't know if that is maybe having parking lots outside of the city that has a park and ride set up so that you then get on public transit. Take public transit, then you might be able to get off right where you want to go. Or again, encouraging more pedestrian or more bicycling. The university is dealing with the same situation, and they're looking at putting lots further away and having these types of bike share or mass transit into the city. I also think that we need to look at how the traffic circulates, and the Park Place conversation is one that needs to be very closely looked at so we can understand, especially emergency services, and how important that is for the city.
Thank you. Okay, for the next question, why Sam, you'll be first on it. And how can we reduce unnecessary mowing? And just make sure M-O-W-I-N-G, like mowing grass. How can we reduce unnecessary mowing around Athens, including along the Hocking River? And how can the city encourage OU to reduce mowing in order to save gas, reduce emissions, and reduce riverbank erosion?
Wonderful question. The university has, I believe, 8 areas of campus which are native plantings, which are now not mowed, that they are there, and you always need signage for these things because people think they're unkept, that they are just wild and nobody's dealing with that. So you need a sign there saying this is a native planting area, and then you encourage wildflowers. You encourage that native planting to have an aesthetic value. So certainly that's one way. The riverbed is an excellent question. As I understand, the Hocking Conservancy District manages that area, and I don't know what their rules and regulations are about that. I'm not sure what else we do. I mean, certainly the wildflowers that we see along the highway and native plantings is probably the best way to get around reducing mowing. Thank you.
Eric?
I'm not sure if that's a subject that the city council can do a lot on in terms of asking OU to mow less or mow more. I mean, I think that we could, if that's the track we want to put a proclamation about or do something about, I guess we could go down that road. But I think you'll find a lot of residents someone here who, what do we do about neighbors who aren't mowing? And I think, a healthy, balanced their recommendations, but how council can encourage OU to not mow as often, I don't see that as something council can do or as in their purview.
Okay, thank you. Let me note and introduce Connor Morris of the Athens News, who's arrived. I'll give you a question or two later, give you a chance to get focused and settled. And so we'll turn to you for maybe after the next two, then we'll come back to you. How's that? And thank you too. You'll be first on this one. And referring to the 3rd Ward, this is a diverse ward. How do you plan to reach these? Say it again.
What?
If you like. This is a diverse ward. How do you plan to reach these diverse?
In Athens, in terms of you have the uptown area, you have a large student population in the 3rd Ward, and then a large residential population in the 3rd Ward. I'm uptown. To to speak with anybody over concerns, ideas, all of those type of things. I'm not sure what the questionnaire is asking for, other than being available by email, by phone, and just being uptown.
Thank you. Okay, Sam?
It is a very diverse ward. I found one way was simply to go door to door and talk to people. Eric has a business background, which I don't have. I think if you could. I did not go, I didn't think that walking into businesses and introducing myself and trying to ask business owners what their issues were was something that was appropriate for me. I did do that in the neighborhoods. And I heard a lot of good and interesting comments from people. I think Eric and I are both not big on campaign materials, so the residents of Ward 3 have not gotten a lot of, or any, flyers and things like that, so you probably won't see that kind of communication from me over the next couple weeks or months. But I'm also available, and I hope to get out more and try to talk to people directly.
Okay, and so Sam, you'll be first on this one. How can Athens better accommodate disabled and elderly people who need to shop and go to the OU buildings and libraries and need to park near such locations?
Another piece of my work at Ohio University that I've been very fortunate to be involved with is the concept of universal design. I was asked to co-chair a committee working on universal design for our facilities. And universal design is a philosophy of looking at the ADA 2010 and figuring out how to go beyond that and make those federal requirements sort of customized for our local community. So through that organization, I've been working with Diane Bouvier and the City Commission on Disabilities to really think again about how the university and the city can work together to make our city accessible for people of all different types of mobility issues and hearing and sight and everything in between. ADA 2010 requires a certain number of spots for buildings. We need to look at that, and we need to hopefully go beyond that so there is adequate parking. We talked to a group called the Accessibility Liaisons. You may know Noah Tremblay. He's very active, and he is one of those liaisons, and it's very helpful to learn about their concerns about what buildings they can have access to, where the parking spots are, what types of parking, whether they're van or them, and then move from there.
Could you read the question again?
Yes, indeed. How and go to the OU buildings and libraries and need to park near such locations?
Well, I agree with Sam. In terms of the OU buildings and libraries, that's somewhat, Athens. Placement of handicap accessible parking spaces. And a big part of that is on the university in terms of does the university want to provide more handicap accessible parking areas in the university? With the changes in parking uptown, I would hope that maybe some more handicap accessible parking spaces, at least one on either side of the street on each block uptown, would be a place to start.
Okay, thank you. Fire away, please.
So you gentlemen been asked yet about economic development in the city of Athens? Okay, great. So obviously this requires the full action of council as well as city administration. Do you have any recommendations?
Is that me?
Let's see. Yes, it is.
Well, I know the city just recently has read it or approved it. I'm sorry to say I don't know the answer to that, but the recommendations in there, I think, are there's pros and cons to both sides of that in terms of attracting businesses. The biggest things that I hear from business owners is that is not student rentals, but family-oriented housing. First, I think it will be much easier to attract business to the area, which will increase economic development.
Connor, in my introductory comments, I mentioned something about encouraging a circular economy in Athens. And through some of the work that I've done with the university, I've been in contact with Bruce Underwood and others at the Athens Hawking Recycling Centers. And I know that the state of Ohio is really looking at ways to be good economically too. So if we can connect businesses with one another, and I've worked to get materials to people who can use them if a building is coming down or a salvage operation can happen, and we can move these around. A larger scale, I'm very interested in conversations in council about how we attract larger businesses to the community. I know TS Trim had a factory and still does have. I don't believe they use the entire building. That employed a lot of people, and that kind of business, that kind of opportunity for our workforce.
Connor, do you happen to have another one ready, or shall I go on?
Go ahead and do one or two more, and then I think I've got one for me ready right now. But
You said you do have one.
but I'm still working on it. So.
He's still working on it, so go
Okay,
ahead.
Fine, that's fine. I didn't want to neglect you.
Of course, thank you very much.
All right. Let's see. This will be Sam will be first on this one. What is your position on possible development on the university-owned Ridges property?
I have gone back and forth on this, and I think I'm going to mention Connor because I think it was one of his articles in the A News that my attention some information that I wasn't aware of. I've spent time up on the ridges with my children and my family for a very long time, and it's just beautiful space. And on the old Kirkbride building to be restored and that's a wonderful economic development. To restore the Kirkbride buildings is to offer kind of an incentive of other opportunities up there. So I'd love to see the Ridges become something wonderful, but I'm near the compost facility developed. But I believe one of the A News maps showed that there was an area up behind the dairy barn, which very few of us, I think, walk on. I've actually been up there myself. But that might be a better place for a development if there had to be graduate student housing or something else that was put up there. I think that might be the solution.
The beauty that is up there, the hiking, some of that stuff maintained. I think the reality of the world is it's going to be developed somewhat. Now, I would love to see a plan that sort of incorporates both those things, or we can have a minimal development making things economically viable at the same time maintaining as much of the sort of natural beauty of that area as we can. I don't think it's realistic to say that we're not going to have any development up on the ridges. It's part of Athens that is not developed, and graduate student housing. I talked a minute ago about adult housing, as I like to call it. Athens needs it, and that's one of the places it can go. So working to be able to find, to achieve both things, to maintain some of the open space, the hiking, at the same time allowing some development up there.
Thank you. Let's see, you'll start off on this next question. Okay. So, how can the city better ensure that Athens really will be safe for all, including the people who have been getting raped and the people whose safety is threatened by the many drunken bar goers?
As someone who deals with bar goers on a regular basis, the vast majority of students are very good people. The vast majority of the people that go out are very good people. It feels, I think, worse than it is because just the sheer number of people aged 18 to 22 that descend upon the town every year. Policing is the single best way to ensure this kind of stuff doesn't happen. The better uptown Athens gets with lighting, the better lit that it is, having cameras uptown. These are the kind of things that are deterrent. I don't think it's realistic to think that any place is going to be able to make anybody 100% safe. But the city can do things in terms of policing, lights, education, to improve safety uptown.
Thank you. Sam?
I would love to have a solution to those problems. It perplexes me, both the issue of sexual violence as well as domestic violence. Primarily, we see it against women. I don't know why men or people feel that they can behave in certain ways. There's no simple solution. I don't think it's a solution of policing. We know that many sexual rape and other violence against women happen amongst acquaintances, and it's behind closed doors. It's not something that the police can see. The university, under President McDavis, I think has done a fairly good job at attacking the party school image, at least. And I think that there is a behavior change there, maybe, where there's a little bit more respect for their community and their education. And I think it's a behavior change issue. I think nationally, I think internationally, we have to focus on educating men and educating people about violence. It's a behavior change, I think, that hopefully society can figure out and move forward. I don't think there's any easy solution.
Thank you. Two questions have come in concerning the Athens City Schools, which is outside the focus of the decisions of the council, but our question viewer suggested to me that I'll read a question and you're welcome to express an opinion as much or as little as you choose. So let's see, Sam, you'll be first on this one, but do you have an opinion about the Athens City Schools' possible consolidation of the elementary schools? So this is a volunteer kind of situation.
Sure. This is a debate that has been going on in my house and amongst all of my friends. I live a short block from East Elementary, and all of my children have gone to East Elementary. They know that West is best. But that being part of our neighborhood, it's a true treasure. We just came back from Bethesda, Maryland, to visit family over the weekend, and we were talking about this issue around the dinner table, and what a small town, what neighborhood schools do for a small town. It's very difficult to describe what that contribution is to a community and to a neighborhood. I think the whole idea of sort of it's mega school or it's neighborhood schools, I have some friends that are on the steering committee, and I've spoken closely with them, and I completely understand that this is an issue of equity, and it's an issue of economics, and it's not simple. And I'm all for making an equitable educational experience for our children. I'm not certain that putting them all in one place makes it equal. So I think it's a very difficult situation. I'm glad that we're studying it. But I do feel that our neighborhood schools are a really important part of Athens.
Thank you. Eric?
Now, I don't have children, so I don't have a dog in the fight, and you couldn't pay me to be on the school board. That being said, both my parents were college professors, both my grandmothers were high school teachers, and my mom's father was also a college professor. So I come from a family of educators. I understand the need or the desire for small classrooms. I think that's important. I think this situation, we're seeing what deferring maintenance and doing some other things, the sort of snowballing long-term effects that kind of stuff can have. And as Sam said, I don't think there's an easy solution, and I can't imagine a solution that everybody is going to be happy with. In terms of anything that, being on city council in the future, I think any kind of deferring of maintenance and those type of issues need to be addressed, and in order to prevent things like this from cropping up down the road.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, Connor? Okay, fire away. You have the floor.
Thank you. So just talking to Jack Brett recently, and he's former with Athens County Job and Family Services.
Can you talk into the microphone, please?
Sure, yeah. Let's be louder.
Start again.
Is this making my voice any louder?
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. So I was talking to Jack Breck recently, who was formerly with Athens County Job and Family Services. He's an anti-poverty advocate, and he was saying that local politicians in Athens don't really seem to address the issue of poverty out in the county, obviously because they're city government officials. Are there some ways that the city itself can work with the county, or just in some ways address those issues of poverty that also are in the city limits but are mainly focused out in the county, because we are in kind of a bubble of sorts in Athens?
I definitely think the city could do a lot more in terms of addressing that. I had a long conversation today with a delivery driver uptown in terms of Union Street right now. There's parking if you have a credit card and a smartphone, but there's no parking otherwise. And a delivery driver was told that he would have to move his truck and walk a block and a half because he didn't have a smartphone in order to use his credit card on Union Street. Now, I understand that kiosks are coming and things are going to change, but I feel it's a little insensitive to have that now and to expect people to be able to do that. These are the type of things that I don't think everybody realizes, that having, to be able to park, you have to have a smartphone and a credit card. That's just not an option for a lot of people in Athens. And so I think the city could do some more in realizing that while a lot of us are blessed here in town with good jobs and stuff, that there's a lot of people in the community that aren't.
Connor, there's so many things that I don't know about how our local governments work, and I don't know how the city and the county officials work together. I know Chris Schmiel fairly well, and I think he is an asset to the county commissioners. I have heard that the new initiative to offer mass transit to Ohio University students and staff in terms of the Bobcat Pass has worked very well and increased ridership. And there may be some interest to be able to work with Athens Public Transit to expand those services further out into the county. For some, it may be an issue of transportation if they can't come into jobs and they can't get there, and those services can be offered to them for a more affordable price. That might help, but I have to say I'm really a little bit ignorant on how the city and the county work together.
Okay, another question's come in. So this one, Sam, you'll address it first. What can and should the city of Athens do to help ensure an adequate supply of clean water for everyone, even while construction increases and the dumping of fracking waste in underground injection wells continues?
Well, another issue I don't know a lot about. I know that there was a lot of debate in the past 20 years over adding fluoride to our water and the health benefits to doing that, and some people opposed to that. I can only think that the close regulation of our water supply, being very aware of our water fields and where developing is encroaching upon those areas. Certainly everybody deserves clean water. I mean, we know from the example of Flint, Michigan, how infrastructure issues can cause great harm to communities. So I would just imagine that we needed to continue regulations and watching our water fields, where we get our water from.
Eric?
I think on an individual or citywide basis, the mayor's push to get everybody to conserve water this month that's been going on, I think I watched the video to attract my attention. It got me thinking about stuff like that and just trying to be conscientious of turning off the water while you're brushing your teeth and those type of things. In terms of fracking, I don't know what the city can really do in terms of dumping of, injection wells in Athens County. The court rulings have not been going in communities' favors in terms of banning injection wells, and that's a fight that I think will continue to go on. And obviously, I don't think any of us want injection wells in our vicinity. But what can Athens City Council do in terms of fracking, other than proclamations and opposing to it? If somebody can tell me something that the city could do, I would love to get on board with it, but I'm not sure what that is.
Thank you. Okay, here's next question, and let's see, this will go to you first, Eric.
Okay.
Since City Council approves the city budget and expenditures, what do you feel are the most critical expenditures and what are the least important?
I would say the most critical are probably safety services, street repair. I mean, the type of the things that we all use on a regular basis. The fire department, police force. In terms of least important, I think what some people would say. Some of the artistic stuff is probably the least important, but I think that's a big reason of why most of us are here in Athens, is because this is what attracts us to it. I think the city could take a more practical standpoint in terms of some of the construction projects, other stuff. I think that the change in the Union Street project probably saved the city some money. I think these type of things can be looked at, but I don't see a lot of terrible waste there, things that I'm angry with.
I would agree with Eric. I think our city services, the emergency police, are a priority. I think we live in we're a community of 6,000 or 7,000 and 20-some thousand college students, and we know how that impacts our community. And I think it's wonderful. I think there's been an evolving relationship between our police and the people that they bring in from other agencies to assist at Halloween or some of our fests. And I see a willingness on the part of the police force to be there to protect, to be there to make sure people are safe, and to have something of a relationship. It appeared to me, if the Athens News reports on the last Palmerfest were accurate, that things can be kept at a lower key if there is a relationship there between our cities. So, but just to answer the question, back to what's most valuable in terms of economic support, I would have to say the fire department and the police force.
Thank you. Well, I think we have run through all the questions, so why don't we step over to closing statements, and that will be you first for a 2-minute closing statement, Sam.
Okay. I would love to help the city. I would love to bring some of my many years of having been an Athens resident. In the Office of Sustainability, we try to always evaluate decisions on a sort of sustainability matrix. We try to look at what a decision does for the environment, what it does for the economy, and what it does for people. So if you can evaluate decisions based on that three-legged stool, people, economic prosperity, and the planet, you can often find a decision that works the best for the entire community. I'm not saying that sustainability matrix is the shuffles you into the right answer for all decision making, but in the years that I've worked for the Office of Sustainability, it's been a very useful process for me so that nothing is left out. Many people think sustainability is about protecting the environment, but economic prosperity is as much a part of sustainability as is the environment. That if something doesn't work economically, then it's not sustainable. If it only enhances the environment but doesn't work for people, if there isn't a social equity piece to sustainability, then it's really not great for the community. So I would love to be able to bring some of the experience that I have working with the university and having been a long time Athens resident and having raised children and been involved in many different aspects to council, and I hope I receive your vote.
Okay, Eric?
Now, obviously, Sam and I are a little different. I am not affiliated in any way with the university. But I think what we both have in common is we both deeply care about Athens, and both as longtime residents, and as an employer and a business owner, I'm invested in Athens. This is This is home. This is, where I plan to spend the rest of my life. And so I care deeply about its future and what direction that it's going in. I tend to be somebody who is a practical, let's find a working solution. Not everybody has to be extremely happy with it, as long as everybody is not extremely unhappy with it. I excel at working on big projects with the fire at the Union, being able to bring back the Union back. And I'd like to bring those skills to City Council. Like Sam, when we redid the Union, a vast majority of it's used reclaimed lumber out of the bar. We've done a lot of that kind of stuff in terms of reusing stuff that was burnt in the fire. And I think that any city plan going forward has to take sort of environmental impact into it. But we also have to be realistic in terms of how do we find working solutions for the problems of Uptown. And that's what I'm here to try to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I think it's time to conclude our evening, and I certainly want to thank our candidates, Sam Crowell and Eric Gunn, for your presentation, your answering questions and so on, and giving us your statements. And I want to thank Connor Morris and Sarah Brumfield of the news media, and Todd Bastine just stepped back in here, and he is the key person in the library. And I want everybody to realize the library has stayed open later for us because of scheduling conflicts. Otherwise, we would not be here. And Todd, you may be the only librarian here, I don't know, but we thank you because you've gone far beyond me. Got a quick dash through the league members. Mary Costello, timekeeper. Steele Weldon ran your questions in. And Judy Roman and David McCoy made sure that they had not already been asked, shall I say. And I'm glad to thank all of you for coming and the thoughtful questions. And I always have to say something like, I think our candidates' nights here are a magnificent expression of the campaigning and political process that it would do the whole world good to see in action. So thanks all of you for coming this evening, indeed.
Thank you.